All right.
Yeah,
So I would like you all to give a warm last ShmooCon welcome to Deviant.
Word up. Thank you. Yeah, audio's not that material. I've tried it through the Hadimis, through the both 1/8 inch. I don't freaking know. Last chance. Last chance. No? No? No audio. Who cares? We got audio out there? Ooh, like balanced sound. All right, cool. I couldn't hear that at all. Okay. Whew. Holy shit. I love seeing all of you. This is wild. Hi. Oh my God. So yeah, this has been churning in my brain for a couple years, this talk. And I've picked at it and revised it. And just like recently, I got contacted by someone at a at a nuke center who's like, hey, I think I know what you're going for because I've read this one thing once. And if you want to put some stuff in the middle of a beam more safely than you proposed on Mastodon, just come down to the reactor. So look for a part 2 of this or an expanded universe of this talk later. But I'm really, really, really happy to be here giving it for the first time ever. I knew this was going to happen at Shmoo if I was accepted. Yeah. Some of you know me. Some of you don't know me. How many people actually know who I am? Hi, right on. Hey, everyone. So yes, I'm Deviant. I have been around the HackerCon scene for kind of a while now. Yeah, so I started attending cons about 25 years ago at DEF CON 8. I have, at last count, I think we've got like 400 badges in my collection. And there's roughly, we tried to do the numbers, it's like 200 times I've been on a stage. And as people in the hotel room this morning will tell you, every single time that I'm about to get up here, I am all giddy, nervous, and like, every last one of you can do this, can get up, can talk. If you have something to share, please share it, because it's what moves the whole community forward and makes us better. And everyone you've ever seen present is just as like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm up here, whether it's their first time or their zillionth time. But you might not know, if you've been seeing me around, that it all started where? ShmooCon 1. That was my first time I was ever accepted as a speaker and my first time talking. And it has never stopped since then. Thank you for the water. Yes, the ones who love me keep me sort of hydrated. This could be water. It's classified. You don't know. So yeah, like, I have a career doing this. I break into buildings. I educate people about physical security. I have a whole company that like manufactures and designs tools and equipment to break into buildings. I'm actually proud to say, who's staying in this hotel? Your hotel has a little doozle on the door, right? Do you know why that's there? What's it preventing? Under-door tax. Do you know why I know it's there in all your rooms? Because they bought all of them from me. So, yeah. I owe my whole life to this scene. I owe my career to this community. I owe my friends to this community. The number of people who come up to us, me and all the other speakers and people you've seen, Mudge, Greg, who was just on stage, Heidi, everyone, and say, like, I'm like, how the hell are you allowed to drive a car? How did you get here? Did your mom drop you off? And they're like, no, I've been doing this for a decade now, and it's because of something that one of you said on stage, and I'm so glad to meet you. That feels so wonderful, and I want to keep that going. I want to see more people doing this. I don't know what's going to happen after Shmoo is gone, but 20 years later, with less hair, less waistline, and more community, I have more happiness, and I'm so satisfied with that. I don't have enough thank yous for Heidi and the Potters and the zillions of people who made Shmoo happen all these years, and I love them very, very much. Thank you to everyone who makes this happen. So people know me as like the lock guy and the teacher and the tool guy, but not everyone knows I'm also a safe technician. So I am SAVTA certified, I'm GSA certified. I spend a lot of time working on vaults, skiffs, military bases, like breaking into containers. Yeah, that's a thing I do, and I don't talk about it much until here. And I'm going to talk about a lot of things in that world that are known to like other people in the safe and vault world or in GSA, but aren't really widely discussed. And I thought it was time to do that. This is Air Force One, not the current one, but it's one in a museum. This is the one that Kennedy and Eisenhower and I think Johnson would have used. Carter was on this one. No, was this? Well, basically, that's the GSA safe on Air Force One. And the docents had said, wow, you just got that open? That hasn't been open in a long time. And I was like, it was set to the out-of-service combo. Don't you know that? They're like, no. This is like stuff that's normal to me that the world doesn't know. It's not set to that combo anymore. But yeah, like servicing and installing and repairing safes is part of my work. And a lot of the work that technicians do, you'd think like servicing, that must be like a wrench and stuff. No, like drilling. Like if a safe stops working correctly, or you want to get in because someone lost the combination, you're drilling in. You're using bore scopes. You're actually looking at the mechanism. Ooh, that's loud audio. You might have to normalize a bit. So you're looking inside of the safe. Like this is a lock that we drilled under the dial ring, and I'm sending a bore scope through. And if you don't know how a lock inside of a safe works, we'll show some diagrams, but I'm manipulating the wheels of the lock from the outside, seeing the inside. And eventually I can get the fence to drop in, jiggle it a little bit because this thing was all crudded up, and we get her open. So that's a really normal thing for a safe technician to do. Like, yay, open, confetti. Now, there are countermeasures against that. Obviously, you don't want your safe to just be opened by any dingus like me. And that's why we use elements inside of a safe to prevent somebody from coming up with powerful tools and breaking in. Remember, a safe's job is not to be impenetrable. A safe's job is just to make an attacker's burden so odious with like time and cost and noise and effort that we're like, whatever's in there, that ain't worth it. I'm not going to spend my time on this. What are some things, like that wasn't a government safe in that video, that was just, a burglary safe. What are some things that manufacturers do? So this Gary safe, you can see a plaque with the name. There's a little plaque at the bottom that would basically be like, go away, don't try, because this safe is equipped with what's known as a glass relocker. Do we have a little, ooh, I don't have my, that's all right. This has a glass relocker, as it is called. So you see relocking device. Who's ever heard of a glass relocker? Not a lot of, there's some hands, you watch the movies, cool. This is one of you who've never seen it. People often think it's like a giant pane of glass inside the safe, and if you drill anywhere, you're just going to shatter it. Why is that bad? Well, there are bolts, extra bolts, biased outward on the sides of the doors that will fire into position if that glass shatters. It's tempered glass. You know it when you hit it. It bang, and you hear all the glass falling down on the inside of the door. But you don't, it's just a tiny piece, because the only place you would try to drill if you don't know what you're doing, I'm going to drill right here where the lock is, and you're going to hit it. A skilled technician will be like, oh, I know this model of safe, I know what they're doing here, I'm going to drill at an angle, or I'm going to drill from the back, I'm going to drill around that relocker. Or if you can't, you have to drill other holes and grab and hook onto the cables. It was actually shown a couple times correctly in Hollywood, very rarely. But that's not the only thing that can prevent drilling into a safe. Manufacturers have tried a lot of stuff in the past. For example, we got this Schwab here. It's got a little badge on the bottom. There was a fashion in about the 20s up until maybe the Second World War to use chemical agent inside of safes. So like Badger Protector or Nighthawk or Beaver Protector, these are all basically just like World War I chemical weapons, like chloropyrcin and phosgene and stuff, that's just inside and is bolted on, and it's very aftermarket, so you don't always know if that's in the safe. Not everyone would put the little badge on there. And some people are like, no, it's just old deprecated tear gas. And other people are like, oh, call hazmat. I have fortunately never encountered one of these. I have friends and colleagues who have. They're like, oh, man, I got the safe open, and there's a hole like right by the glass. And they're like, oh, crap, man. Okay, let's call somebody from the county to like clean this up. So, yeah, you kind of do have to know what you're doing, and it's a risky world, but it's possible to neutralize a safe by drilling in and actually scoping it. That's a very, very common thing. And if you see it in movies, it's not fiction. That's what we do. However, the government knows this as well. It's well known how safes are vulnerable to various attacks. And if you're protecting something more than just some papers or jewels, you're like, man, we really should have some higher standards. We really need to do something to protect these better. So what does the government use? Right? If we have national security secrets, national security information, we have to keep those kind of documents in a special list of the spies who are operating in Berlin. You keep those in a safe somewhere. Do you think maybe, all right, well, the government would just get like a better, bigger safe, obviously, right? Like this is one of the most robust safes you can buy on the market. This is ISM Super Diamond. It's about a $50,000 safe. Probably one of the very few TXTL 60s that I've ever seen. And you're like, oh, look at that thing. But this is not a government building. This is a biomedical research lab, I believe, that installed it. So you're like, what about really, really multi-mega millionaire, billionaire people? They've got to keep their secret defense plans to get away from the guillotines when we all destroy them. Like, do they have, like, super crazy safes? Well, no. Most residential buildings, even if you're super wealthy, you're not using highly robust safes. In fact, all the safes in this screen here What do you think the best one is? It's the tiniest one all the way on the left there. That's the only burglary safe in this screen. The others are all gun safes. Gun safes, if you have, who's got a gun safe at home? Who's got more than one? Who's got like ones upstairs and downstairs and in other places? Yeah. Gun safes aren't that secure. I did a whole talk about that in the past. Gun safes are really not that robust against many attacks. But you might say, all right, so then, man, you're showing me all this stuff like the jewelry safe and the crazy research. And what is the government safe, man? It's like a filing cabinet. Most government safes, people are shocked to learn, are even another order of magnitude like weaker than your gun safe or your jewelry store safe. Like this is called a GSA container. There's some that are like filing cabinets, some that look like little map and plan containers, like this one here. But the idea is that, okay, yes, someone could attack this safe, like you could chop into it or drill into it, but like DoD Manual 5200, I think it's Enclosure 3, Book 3, it specifies, like if you're storing classified material, you have to have it in addition to armed guards that come around every 2 or 4 hours, depending on the materials. Or you have to have an alarm system covering, and this, you can see this safe has a little alarm mounted right on it. Every, 15 minutes response time or 30 minutes, it's classified or secret or top secret. This is not the government, by the way. This is kind of adjacent. It's public sector. Do you know what this safe is? This is a Type 2 map and plan container, postal safe. What is it? Yes, yes, you get a drink if you want to come up and grab the bottle, or I think my wife has it over there. Yes, who remembers a few years back there was a root key signing ceremony that couldn't happen because like the safe was locked and they couldn't get into it? That's this safe. That is the safe. And they are drilling it open. That is the technician getting it open. So yeah, please, but rock it on. Yeah, grab, I don't know, find a glass or just toss and wash. Right on. Oh yeah, there's cups right here. Rock it out. So let's say you neutralize a safe. Go for it. You were there? Oh, dig it. Were you the guy on the ground? Were you the guy taking the photo? Awesome. Awesome. Jesus Christ, man. Well, now I definitely do want to talk to you. Dig it. Salud. Right on. So let's say you neutralize a safe. Is it just like a giant lump of crap now? Like, all right, well, we got to throw this thing out. Help me lift it, boys. No, after you've neutralized a safe, you typically drill. You see all that operation. It's usually called under the dial ring. You rip the dial off. You drill a small hole. That's where the lock casement is. But also, you can repair it. You can patch it up, make it look all clean, put a new lock casement, lock face on the there thing. Great. And most patching up is done on the outer surface. The behind looks a little slaggy and rough. Sometimes it looks really bad, actually. So safe technicians, there's a procedure. Whether you're going to repair a civilian safe or, in this case, a government safe, you actually have to, use steel pin. There's a whole, like 809B is the repair process. You have to, like, pack it with ball bearings and other product, or you have to jam steel pins in it. You have to ultra harden it. And you're like, boy, I hope I never have to freaking drill through there again, because now no one's getting through that spot. And then you texture it, and you sand it, and you Bondo it. All of this means, like, if I were to neutralize a safe, it takes me so long to repair it that, like, if I was a bad actor, some guard will have come around and pointed a rifle at my face. Now, I said it like, oh, man, I hope I never have to drill back in there ever again. Technicians know this. You don't see this in the government so much. I mean, I've heard stories. But in the civilian world, I've known, like, safe technicians that come service a safe, and they're like, what the fuck is this? It's like putty and Bondo, and somebody just like, yeah, it's probably good. Because that previous technician is like, if this customer ever calls me out again, I don't want to do that again. I'm just going to drill through this clay that I packed in the hole. I mean, you've seen jobs that, like, I've known people on pen tests that are like, they pop it, they leave the payload on the server. They're like, they're going to hire us again in 6 months. If they don't clean it up, it'll be way easier to get back in. That happens in the safe world. Technically, we're supposed to do this. There's a very standard repair process, and you have to paint it the right color. GSA, all our classified documents are always behind one of 3 or technically 4 colors. You've got black, you've got parchment, you've got federal standard gray. It's not haze gray, we're not underway. It's federal standard gray, personal day. But wood grain. Wood grain's a fun one. So for a time, there was one person who was authorized to meticulously paint these GSA safes with wood grain. And they were for officers, rooms and things, and high-ranking civilians and such. And they would look all pretty in their office. But that meant if you 809B repaired it, you'd need to, like, paint it, and you'd have to call that one person who has since retired. So now there are still wood grain classified document safes in the wild, but they are dwindling out because if they ever get neutralized, you have to just federal standard gray, got to cover it all up. So they're going away. No other colors are authorized for GSA containers because you have to be able to be like, why is that green? What kind of asshole was in here doing something to this thing? So yeah, drilling under the dial ring, it's harder to see, but it also means it's harder to inspect. There is a whole inspection process. It's in Enclosure 3, Paragraph 2. And like we used to have to, like, every so often you recertify a container, so you have to take the drawer out, you have to check the bolts, check the servicing, all right. Then you have to take the lock off and look under the dial ring and under the casement. Is there a hole? Was it documented? That's a huge pain in the ass. So eventually it was decided that these inspections were like a hassle and too laborious. So what do we do instead? Well, they're like, okay, drilling under the dial ring, let's make that not a thing anymore. So neutralization of that area is challenging because now there's tons of hard plate. They're like, all right, let's stop people from drilling in. This is around 1990. We started changing actually how the construction of the lock casement was shielded. So this is multiple layers of weld beads with, you've got like all kind of ceramic and other carbide shit packed in there. Mosler had like a special process that they called Relsum. You know what it is? It's Mosler spelled backwards. Marketing. And you're like, well, how the hell do you're never going to get through that. Well, yeah, what we do now is we just go for the bolts. So loads of times, this is some Secret Service office, and I'm just measuring, not on the lock itself, I'm measuring the bolts, and I'm just slapping a rig on. And again, if you want to watch videos of sparks flying, they're online. And it makes a huge goddamn mess, but I can chew through this thing in about half an hour. Chock the bolts off. I think we got one of the bolts sitting up here if you want to play with it. And you're like, that is not an easy repair, is it? Well, during the changeover to this program, they mandated, and it's funny how technology takes a while. Someone's like, what if we did it a better way? Nowadays, the drawer heads are replaceable. So you just order a new drawer head, drop that on, Bob's your uncle, you're done. So yeah, classified safes aren't built with more than about 10 minutes of forced entry resistance. But it should take much longer to remedy that, to actually repair it, right? And that's why we have physical access control systems, we have guards, we have ID systems, like we have all these things. Speaking of resistance, many of you raised hands when I said you have a gun safe. Your safes at home might have a fire rating, right? Who's got a safe that's actually, you bought it, you're like, oh, it's fire rated, I'll keep my important shit in there. You know that's not rated for electronic media, right? It'll still get really warm. Your flash drives are not surviving that if you're in California right now and you had to evacuate. Sorry to say. The government, however, used to use like our original containers, Class 1 and Class 2 containers, way back in the 50s. They were fire rated. They had fire endurance. And then somebody said, wait a minute, don't we have like embassies and consulates all around the world in hostile zones that sometimes get like lit on fire or bombed? It's probably bad if after the debris and smoke clears, all the building has come down, but there's like all of our safes just sitting there with all classified things in them untouched. That's probably not what we want. So our modern containers that we have Class 5 and 6 now, they do not have fire endurance at all. We have, fire suppression systems in our buildings. I gave a whole talk about that. But where does this bring us today in terms of like protecting our secrets, as I'm going to tell you about it during the Cold War? Okay. So non-destructive attacks are a whole different animal. And that's really the scary thing. If I make a whole mess chopping and drilling into a safe, you'd be like, all right, we knew something happened. The government especially is really leery of non-destructive attacks. For example, manipulation. I teach a course on manipulation. Lockmasters teaches a class. Mark Bates teaches a class. There's a few schools that do this. I could teach just about anyone in this room how to manipulate a safe lock. It's not like the movies where there's a stethoscope. You're basically just doing really fine observation of what are called contact points. We're not going to dig way into it, but like you're looking at fractions of a number as you're running the dial. If you want to see absolute like granite gonads, you could watch a video from ShmooCon2 where my good friend Renderman was on stage and brought some safe locks, and someone in the audience was like, actually, I have a safe right here, and plopped it on stage, and homie got it open during our talk. Like, I'm like, Jesus, man, I wouldn't try that. I would need way more to creature to try that. What is happening when you're actually doing this? So inside of a safe lock, you have multiple wheels, and you can see these wheels are being driven around because someone's operating the dial on the outside. And the wheels themselves, they have obviously very large slots in them. You might have seen that when I was using the scope earlier, right? Those are called gates. And if you input a combination, you turn it one way and another and back and forth, you can align all of those gates. The first digit has now been entered. Coming around, we're picking up the second wheel. We're going to enter the second digit of the lock. That is now entered. We've parked that wheel with its gate under the fence. And we bring this last wheel around, and this large gray lever arm wants to drop inward. And now that the gates are aligned, yay, it can. You can retract the bolt. These are those wheels, by the way. These are the wheels in the lock. Again, not crazy robust mechanisms. You just need something to kind of check whether the user's input was correct. And if you're looking at these wheels, you might say, oh, that's the gate. I see it there. That's the notch that you just described. What's that other stuff? You got like holes and stuff on the bottom. Why do they have to have those holes? Well, if you didn't have those holes, this wheel wouldn't be balanced, would it? And that means if you rattle the safe around enough, chances are it'll eventually kind of just settle into position. And if the safe happens to be mounted, like with the vertical fence on the top, so it'd be right-hand mounting, the fence can just naturally drop into those gates. And this actually happened a lot in the service. It happened especially in the Navy. So vibration attacks were accidentally discovered. I mean, it was known by some people, but it was rediscovered. A lot of things in the world get rediscovered by people like, wow, this is news to me. And it was news to a lot of people in the service because they'd be steaming out at sea, and they're like, just like steaming, and somebody would come into the radio room, and like a safe would just be hanging open with the code books and everything. And some, lieutenant goes like screaming at a bunch of petty officers and ensigns, like, who the hell, blah, 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 blah. And then they lock it up and change the combinations. And then they're like 85 nautical miles in some other direction, and another goddamn safe is open. And they're like, what is happening? And they would pull into port, and people would come and check the safes, and no, there's nothing tampered. And the way I was told when I was learning all this is somebody eventually was like heloed out to a ship at sea. And he's like, all right, so you want me to look at the safe? He looks down at the deck. He's like, so is it always like this? They're like, what? Like when the screws are turning, is the boat vibrates like this? Yeah, I know your problem. And they're like, oh, and that actually resulted, they're like, wow, this is such a useful, I didn't know the safes you guys were using were this vulnerable. There's a tool called a Jacob's Jiggler that was invented. And it's just a little like cranky box that you attach to the handle, turn up the speed, and just chung, 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 and it makes a safe vibrate all the wheels. And you could get safes open for a long time like this. You can do it yourselves with a palm sander on really cheap safes. It's an actual thing. Like someone in Tool, she was reading a post and was like, hey, we have this model of Sentry safe. She's like, well, turn it on its side and strap a palm sander to it and call me in 45 minutes. And then they're like, okay, she's like, try the handle. And it opened. And like, wow, that still works. Yes, it does. Now, let's say you're worried about someone opening the safe, maybe with no manipulation at all. They're authorized, but they're not supposed to be opening the safe at that time. We can monitor for that. Here is an early prototype of a safe that actually has monitoring circuitry inside the lock casement. So you can see if the lever arm drops, you can see if the actual cam is turning and operating. This is an early prototype from the Miller collection. We'll talk about the Miller family a lot in this talk. Yeah, amazing, prolific safe inventors. How about circuitry inside of a safe that if you're opening at the wrong time because someone's sticking a gun in your face? I did a little video about this before Shmoo as a teaser, right? This is a lock that has some extra mechanisms in it. You're like, what is this little arm on the side? And there's like the bolt is here. That's not the bolt. No, the bolt's on the other side. What's this thing? It's electronic contacts. Yes, this is that same safe lock. This is what's called a duress safe, a duress mechanism. So operating the safe the normal way, we've already seen this. We're going to enter our numbers. Second digit coming in. Third digit coming around. Okay, you drop the fence in, everything will open properly. No problems. But you're noticing maybe the wheel closest to you has another gate. Like, why is that there? Well, let's watch this now again, but a little different. We're entering, again, one digit here, entering the next digit. Coming around to that last number, however, instead of landing on the appropriate final digit, you overdrive, the standard is by 10 right here, and now the fence is actually going to drop and click into that lever, which will ka-chunk, hit that switch. So you are actually setting off an alarm that's wired up, and someone standing right next to you may not know it. Duress codes are very common. They're common in alarm systems. You might have worked somewhere with like, hey, if there's ever a guy robbing the place, just disarm the alarm, but use it backwards. That's very common. RSA tokens. Anybody have an RSA token? You ever got training? You increment the last digit, right? There's duress codes in a lot of these systems, and on and on and on. So you say, well, all right, if there's all different, oh my God, there's a guy with a gun and a guy who can drill and a guy who can break in. Time locks. Time locks are a great solution. We have one over here, right? You have little clocks inside. You set those clocks to when the safe should be opened. And until those clocks wind down, the safe cannot be opened. There's a bar blocking the actual retraction of the bolt. It will not happen. That's why you have multiple movements for redundancy or in case there's an overwind. And time locks were great. Everyone's like, hooray, I could sleep over the weekend. This is good. All my problems are over. That worked well until a day that will live in infamy. What day is this? What are we seeing here? This is Pearl Harbor. What day? You know the speech by Roosevelt on the radio? December 7th. What day of the week was that? That was a Sunday. There were people running all over like Hickam and Schofield barracks, like trying to smash safes open to get national defense plans because Japanese Zeros were banging out of the sky on a Sunday. War is 7 days a week, kids. So we're like, oh God, okay, this is not going to work at all either. And that's where we start to see really fascinating stuff in the safe world. We start to see the idea of what are called manipulation-resistant, or they call them manipulation-proof mechanisms. Again, credit to the Miller family. Like Harry Miller designed what would eventually become the 8400. It's a completely different mechanism. If you've ever worked on military bases where you had to dial a combination and then flip a little butterfly or push in on the dial, this is the one that would eventually become the 2937, which is still used today, the test model of the MP. So like really interesting group, what are called Group 1 safe locks. And you say, all right, well, how do I know if my safe is a good safe or not, right? Well, like this one says right here, it says like Group 2 combination lock. Quick mnemonic, in the service. You got a first Louis and a second Louis. Who outranks who? Who's in charge? First lieutenant's in charge. Same thing with safes. Group 1 safe locks are better than Group 2 safe locks. They are made to tighter tolerances. They have mechanisms in them to defeat all these kind of skilled countermeasures. They are just very tightly made. They have all kind of features. Now, they cost more, right? Group 1 safe lock, this is still used to this day on our armories. I service armories, weapons lockers, they're all 2937s. That's going to cost a lot more to make. So someone said, well, the market, man, you got to do it capitalism. So like, how do we make one that's kind of better, but cheap? You're like, well, we can make a Group 2M. What's that? You look, it's like The Office, the meme, like they're the same picture. No, they're not. Look really closely at the 2M. There's little false gates around the wheels. There's what's called an eccentric roller in the nose of that cam, right, that drops into the cam. So they're little mechanisms that make manipulating a pain in the butt, but you can still make the lock kind of cheaply on the market. So you say this chart here, you're like, all right, well, there's an extra slot. What else could there possibly be? Well, it looks like the same freaking thing. Group 1, Group 1R, it's the same, mechanically, they're almost the same thing. Manipulation resistance, very similar. Anyone know what the R stands for? Yes, radiologic. Radiologic attacks, X-raying a safe was a real concern during the Cold War. So what did we do? We started making safe plastic wheels. Very often Delrin would be used, very dimensionally stable, very tolerant, very good self-lubrication. So they would prevent attacks. You could actually like X-raying, we're going to talk about this. X-raying a safe was a real thing. And using plastic, you can't get a good image inside the safe. So you say, wait a minute, X-raying a safe? What are you, like, dragging it like a doctor's X-ray machine? No, there's field portable X-ray units. Anybody who does TSCM work, I would say raise your hand, but you won't. Like, yeah, you got the Mini Z, little backscatter. Rapiscan makes this. Viken Detection makes the Nighthawk. It runs on a DeWalt battery. It's pretty cool. If you have, like, concern that someone's going to, I don't know, send you a bomb in the mail or something, you can scan all your mail. This is an example of that happening. And the question is, are they being shipped a bomb? Nope, just a multimeter. Yeah, you can find these on like GovPlanet and GovDeals if you want to do dangerous stuff and not have kids later. Yeah, you can get these, and yes, you could try to use them against safes. I strongly recommend that, does anyone know what this is? Yes, TLD means something to people on the internet, but to people who do X-ray things is this thermoluminescent dosimeter badge. Right? If you're doing TSCM, all the people who do TSCM work, they look like they work in a cancer division in a hospital because they have these little badges. I know about a lot of these tools because a buddy of mine in the UK who does spooky stuff, he was telling me a story about, he's like, oh yeah, you got to check out the Nighthawk. It's kind of a cheaper version if you want to play with that. And he told me one day somebody's badge, because they collect their badge and medical checks it out, and one of his colleagues got a call. He's like, hey, Nigel? Yeah, okay, you answered the phone, so you're not dead. But you got to come in, because if you're not dead, you've developed Marvel superpowers by now. And they're like, what? And they checked him out. The guy is fine. And so they work in the equivalent of like SCIFs. You can't have your cell phone. You can't have electronics. They're like, let's check what's going on in your office. So he wanted to be able to see like what time it was. He just brought a little clock from home. What happened? What was causing his badge to, because he leaves his badge on his desk at the end of the day, right? Yes, yeah. So he had luminescent dials. So that guy was fine. I like that story a lot. But now you might be saying, okay, so this is all modern tech that's very cool and groovy, but like, this didn't exist during the Cold War. I thought you were talking about way back when we were, fighting the Comblock nations and stuff. But X-raying, that was a concern way back then? Yes, it was. We're going to talk about a special team that operated in Poland. They were Division 9. They were known as the Invisible Team. So during the Cold War, espionage and clandestine ops, they were in its heyday. You've seen countless movies about this, all set in this era. What was actually happening in the European theater especially, is wilder than everything Hollywood has told you. And now we know more about it. Very recently, just a couple years ago, a book was published by someone who's an investigative journalist in Poland. It's called Niewidzialny. It means invisible. So Tomasz Iwaszkiewicz, he interviewed some of these cats who have retired. Some of them have left the Warsaw Pact nations where they once lived. Some of them left because they needed medical care in the West. And the stories that, it's not published in English, it's only available in Polish. But, oh my God, the work the Invisible Team was, all the regular stuff you'd expect. Honeypot operations, influence operations, people who spoke multiple languages, beautiful people of every gender, tempting people back to hotels with cameras in the walls. You'd expect this. Then there's like what they would call urban mountaineering. They would just scale buildings. They would climb up with rope ladders to get in windows, going from embassy balconies, like going around. Like basically, you see the Spanish embassy was on the top floors of this building. They were able to get on the roof, rope ladder down, and come around to different sides of and come in the windows to get into the secured rooms. Because like, who would? Nowadays we build SCIFs. You can't have a SCIF with like windows. So yeah. Stories about people who got jobs on the renovation teams. So consulates are being constructed. Like the American consulate, bricks being laid, rafters going in, plumbing being installed. And one of the Invisible Team guys was like, he would just walk around with a bucket of water, looking kind of lost and confused. And if American guards were like, what are you doing here? He would just kind of mumble and answer them in Polish and walk away. And he's looking at he's like, oh, there's a wire chase is going here. And he's just taking notes. Other people would like, when they would cycle hardware out, because again, it's a communist nation. They don't have like, oh, please, I don't have much possessions. They would be like, can I take this lock home? I could use it on my door. And and back then, we didn't think about this kind of stuff. And they're like, yeah, homie, go ahead and take that for your house if you want to use it. And they're taking it apart and figuring out how things worked. They had a room in the basement of the airport. And it was like under the concrete. They had a special room that would go down a ladder. They would steal, by bribing baggage handlers, they would steal cases that were coming in, like luggage from people who were our technicians from the Western nations coming in to service and install new shit. They would often copy the keys to locks before they were in the buildings. Some of these photos are really bad because, again, these are copies of photos that some of these guys smuggled out or had in their personal effects. This is all flaps and seals work. This is opening envelopes, reading mail. Dudes were tampering with Dippo bags, which you're not allowed to do. But yes, all is going on in the Cold War, man. They were opening our mail, reading our cables, resealing it, and sending it on before they read our mail before our embassies read the mail. Group B was a whole special team I loved reading about who would basically augment the surreptitious operations by being hooligans if they needed more time. So there's a story of a Spanish diplomat who was at some dinner state function, and they're like, okay, we got eyes on him, go break into the embassy. And then dude left the party early. So oh man, is he going to his apartment? Is he going to his mistress? No, oh shit, he might be coming to the office. So Group B's job was to splash vodka all over themselves, and they just kind of they jump around him on the street, and then other people pretending to be police show up, and they're like, hey, what is this shenanigans? Up against the wall, and slow everyone down for half an hour while they're trying to get out of the embassy that they're breaking into. They would get into fender benders. They would just hit somebody with a car lightly and oh, I got to get your information. What happened here? So yeah, they would have a vehicle on standby for things like that. It's crazy cool. It's an amazing book. The knowledge they had of our facilities, the Warsaw Pact spies, so they were not always breaking in when they weren't occupied. We had facilities where people were working and living, and they would break in at night.
These are called craftsman shoes or museum slippers, and they would just be walking around our embassies while, like, diplomats are asleep in the racks. They had notes that are things like, remember, the third step squeaks on the left side. They were in our facilities so often, they knew it all. This is a skiff in one of our buildings, right? Our buildings were renowned for being hard. The American and the Swedes, we were told, like, in the notes, like, oh, those were the really, they had what they at the time would call a bunker. Now we would call it a skiff, right? They were like, oh, the Spanish and the Venezuelans, you can break into those very easily. This is one of our skiffs, right? Here's another one. This is an American consulate. This is a door they've opened. Anybody ever seen a lock like this? Yes, indeed. Simplex 900, still in use to this day on a lot of day doors. They brute forced it. One of the team members was he's showing this photo to Tomasz, and he's like, oh, yeah, we worked out. And now this is well known. Locksmith Ledger posted about this. You can brute force a simplex if somebody's not using enough button presses. Ask me about it later. We're going to hang out later with all of this stuff in the Lockpick Village. This is a Spanish ambassador's safe. Again, poor photo because they're taking this at night in the dark with an X-ray, with an infrared filter, like on their lens. They got the Spanish ambassador's safe open. They got a skiff open with a time lock in another Spanish embassy. I recommend you have to, I guess, anyone can speak Polish and read the book. So just treasure troves of information. Getting cipher encryption machines. Like you say, okay, but you said the Polish team reported that some places were easier to break in. The U.S. and the Swedes had really good security. Yes, they did. This is them breaking into those facilities, though. This is them getting all the keys in one of the skiffs in the Swedish building that opened all the diplomats' houses and their offices all throughout through Poland and the Comblock nations, right? This is a safe opened in there. This is an American consulate in Krakow. They got into all the rooms and found the hidden room behind a panel that led up to the radio room in the attic. And they installed their SIGINT gear up there, right? The U.S. Embassy in Poznan, they were breaking into the innermost rooms, and it was thought of as nothing short of witchcraft by everyone else in the Warsaw Pact and they weren't really a well-known team, but the people like, how are these guys getting all these documents? They must have a lot of, like, sex workers on their operation with these honeypots. No, this is where radiologic attacks started. The radiographic attacks, this team was given a building. Department 9 was so good, they got their own building, and essentially, they built it up from scratch, and they're, like, putting all their equipment in, and some guy's like, what's that room in the back with, like, a giant hole in the floor and the gantry crane? Yeah, they had radiological isotopes, they had radioactive isotopes, which are used for actual machining purposes. They were ordering them through scientific front companies to do, like, metal testing. If you've ever had, like, a gun barrel that's undergone what's called X-ray testing for, like, again, you put a tiny bit of isotope inside of a piece of material, you put film on the outside, you develop that film. Now, you're seeing footage in a modern engineering sense, which was doing it very safely. They were not. They were, like, purchasing stuff off-label from nuclear research institutes and just going in hardcore mode. The way they did it, if you have a safe, you want that safe open, you put film on this side, you put an isotope on this side, you make an image. And you're like, okay, I can see the safe lock now. Now, they described it as kind of like a doctor looking at an ultrasound. If you're not a medical technician, you're like, is that a baby? Is that a foot? I don't know what that is. But a doctor is like, oh yeah, it's a boy. So they would have to figure out which wheels were in what position and reverse out the combination. It took them a little while to be like, no, that one's probably in the front or the back. Now, anybody who's ever done X-ray work or worked in a dentist's office, you're like, well, they need a dark room. Yeah, they were doing it in our embassies. They would go in the bathroom, would set up all their wet gear, put in a near-infrared bulb, and they were developing film while diplomats were asleep upstairs. That's hardcore! The team member Chesio was known as the best one on their team who could do it in like a couple hours. And they would say, like, oh, before we did all this crazy stuff, we had our dossiers, we would try people's birthdays and their mistresses' birthdays. And Tomasz is taking notes, and he's like, oh, man, that's hilarious. And they're like, well, don't laugh. The Warsaw Pact safes probably would have all had that shit as well. Like, everyone does that dumb crap. The users will do dumb things. But yeah, dumb things abounded during this time. Oh, my God, 10 minutes. We're going to make it. Basically, like, this is how you transport isotopes the right way. They were basically just using the inner pot and lugging it around with not enough shielding. They kind of made it man-portable, but they knew. They measured it. They're like, oh, man, This is no good. This is, when they would caravan, first of all, they'd put it in the car, and like it would be riding almost off of its front axles and floating along the road. They would put one car ahead with one dude, and everyone would caravan behind, and they would stop every so often and change people out. Because again, dangerous stuff. You don't want to be near it. And also, when you're operating, they're not like wearing lead lab gear. You're getting a full blast of isotope. So what were they actually using, right? They were using mostly cobalt-60. They're very small. You're talking like the size of graphite in a pencil. You can still encounter isotopes like this in like brachytherapy and cancer oncology wards. Now, they were kind of handling these isotopes on the types of devices that you would use in brachytherapy or in materials testing. But again, like they're taking it out of the pot and waving it around the room with like pliers and attaching it. All of these guys were getting zapped hard. Now, how would they do this on site? We know this now. We didn't know before. Some of them it was really easy. Some of them, the safes weren't bolted down. They would just move the safe away from the wall, put the isotope behind it. Bob's your uncle. Hey, there, all right, awesome. What if you have a skiff door? Well, team members would reach through the keyhole, because there was a mechanical key, like, well, we have the safe lock and the key lock. This is a rod going up through the back side to the actual safe casement, where they would feed that isotope up through, hold their film, go develop their film. Sometimes they would make a pinhole in the door frame, because who checks the door frame? It's just, we'll cover that up with a little piece of tape, a piece of putty. They would feed that isotope all around, right? There's a story of them like getting caught on a sharp angle, and they're like, oh God, wait, can you get this out of there? And the isotope's like stuck in the door, and they're like all farting around with it. They're like, oh, Jesus. Now, if anyone is, again, a long time ago, Eric Schmiedel talked about this a little bit at DEF CON 14. I'm old. Those plastic wheels, they started encountering the radiologic, because the Americans, like the NATO nations, are like, something's up. There's rumors of something radiation. So like, what if they're X-raying our safes? And we started seeing those plastic wheels. At the time, when Eric gave his talk, he's like, there's always been this rumor that the COMBLOC people, the Warsaw Pact nations, could beat that. We don't know how. We now know how. They switched from cobalt to iridium-192. And if you're not familiar, like you're not nuclear techs, I'm not going to have you read decay schemes, but like one of my now new friends who was talking to me online, he's like, oh yeah, so basically like if I'm near cobalt or near iridium I can be around for like an hour, and then I would get, hey, you got to go home and you've exceeded your dose for the year. Cobalt, 20 minutes, and you got to stay away from spicy rocks for a year. So iridium is less powerful. You're like, well, how would the X-ray wouldn't show shit? They were using a scintillation counter. They were literally putting iridium, super low power emission, and even those plastic wheels were enough to raise or lower that little dancing needle, and they could figure out, as they're staring at it, right in front of the beam, watching the needle, watching the dials, getting safes open. I have since learned that scintillation counters exist in very cheap Bluetooth form now, and I plan to do things very stupid in the near future. These are some of the Group 1R safe locks that you can see in the Lockpick Village. Yeah. I have people that want to work with me to put some of these into a beam. So again, like watch for part 2 of this talk. Eventually we started to see like lead. This is the Chubb Mark IV. You got lead shielding all around it. So they would just use even harder core isotopes with their film. They were talking about getting isotopes from Russia, and they would put them 17 meters away, and it was still strong. And again, all these guys were just roasting their balls. This was their document scanner that they were using, if you've like the Google Books project. Yeah, they were harvesting tons and tons and tons of documents at the time. I know I'm going to run out of time, so I won't keep going. There's so much more. I want to talk all about the electromechanical locks that came out. How many people have ever worked with like an let's say a lock that might look like, let me show you, maybe a lock that looks something like this? Show of hands in the room. All right. We're not going to have enough time to talk about it here on stage. But again, like right around the 1990s, the switch from the black label program to the red label program. The 1990s, we had all the whiz-bang footage coming out of the Gulf. And that's also when we became more technologically advanced. We switched from black label to red label, and the idea of a new type of safe lock, the electromechanical, designed by the Miller family. Harry Miller had actually Clay, Harry's son, Clay Miller, had this idea. He prototyped it out. And then this is the origins of a company called Moss Hamilton. Never more 1990s has a logo ever existed. The story of the Moss Hamilton lock and the story of what happened was detailed in a book called Safecracker, which a book that I strongly recommend. Dave McComey, very notable safe lock technician, wrote a book called Safecracker. I will talk about the rest of this in the Lockpick Village, but essentially the investigation, the moment this lock came out, Sargent and Greenleaf lost tons of their business, and the government is a huge cash cow. Many companies in this room would probably go under if their government contracts just went away. Sargent and Greenleaf panicked, and they're like, "Oh shit, we gotta this new player on the market." They figured out how to beat it. Internal engineers figured out how to beat it with bent wire, and like, well, that's got to be the end of that. And then no, the government let them fix it. Moss Hamilton, all right, because Jimmy Hamilton is a whole. We'll talk about Jimmy Hamilton when I'm not being recorded, but it's kind of like the Rourke family in the in that film. Jesus Christ! Like basically, he was a very connected political bastard. He had senators in his pocket, basically. So like eventually, I'll tell you the story in the Village of Mike Madden, who was given the task by S&G. He was a DOE guy. He worked at he was at Livermore. He was told to investigate these new X-07s, and he found a defeat for them almost the same year that they came out. And that defeat has been known, and it is repeatable, and it is reliable. And all the time, Sargent and Greenleaf is like, all right, we got him covered. And like, no, they're not knocking it off the qualified products list. One of the people at S&G was even talking, this is super inside baseball GSA stuff. I know I'm gonna get it on time, you're good. They were like, look, we're submitting our own lock. We're trying to knock this one off the qualified products list, and we have our new lock. We want to compete in this market space. And it kept getting rejected. Every version of the S&G lock, the new electromechanical lock, to fit this new standard, kept getting rejected. And they're like, what do we have to do? The engineers were asking. And privately, one of the people in the government was like, you have to stop trying. Jimmy Hamilton has senators in his pocket. It will never happen for you. And that was it for years. Mike Madden's research got shelved. He was threatened, like they classified his research, then it was unclassified for a while. He had to leave the lab because he got so much heat for the testing he had done. Dave McComey's book, remember, he's a whole prolific author. He has a whole chapter about this. At the time this happened, Dave McComey, who was, in addition to being an author, he had a magazine, he had a whole publication. He was ready to go in the trade press. And by the way, so their colleague, Don Shepard, the slogan for the X-07 was the only way to pick them is to choose them. Don Spinard gave them, he said, hey, Mike, I got one of those old shirts from the debut of that lock. So they had this photo ready to go in the article. ShmooCon's been around 20 years. This is what I'll end on, this story. Anyone remember way back at DEF CON, remember Cisco Gate, right? If you're not familiar with this, kids, this was a time at Black Hat when literally Cisco Systems and ISS, they were mad at Mike Lynn and his research. And the night before Black Hat started, Jeff is here. I don't know if Jeff's in this room, but all of his volunteers were like ripping pages out of the Black Hat program and shredding the DVDs and stuff. That's what happened to the article. The Dave McComey, same thing. Dave McComey called for comment, and hey, Moss Hamilton, I'm going to publish this story about this research about your locks. Everyone hit the roof, hit the fan, lawyers freaked out. This was all those pages from Black Hat that year. I'll end with saying, though, when Jeff was like dealing with the lawyers at Black Hat and Cisco and everyone's like, oh man, get those, he was like on the phone in real time. Dave McComey tried, he really tried. He wanted to put this out in his trade publication. He was working with the attorneys and back and forth, and Mike Madden was worried about getting sued, and he was like, no, we got to pulp it. So literally, they had an entire publication back at the time in the 90s, ready to ship out on a loading dock, and they shredded the whole thing. Moss Hamilton didn't know that, though. So one last chance, Dave McComey got on the horn, and he was like, well, if you guys want, I'll sell you the copyright to the story, and then you can decide what to do with it. And Moss Hamilton's like, yes, we'll buy it. And we demand you destroy the articles. And he's like, all right, I'll get on that, homie. So that's some gangster shit. I love that. In the end, this research was never talked about. S&G was able to put their lock out. No one uses it. Everyone hates it. There are over 1 million units of X-Series locks that were shipped over the years. They are still on containers to this day. Every last one of them, including the X-07, is still on the qualified products list to this day. That whole book, Safecracker, which Dave talks about his whole career, including getting into a very famous vault in Minneapolis when a very famous musician died, It's amazing. Again, he's a gem of a human. His whole life is just a dream. Everyone who shares knowledge, like Dave and like you and like others here, this is what makes us all better. Many of you know me from around this scene because I love talking about this, but every last one of you has something to say. Keep your security posture evolving. You can't stay stagnant. Every time you're like, all right, we've solved this problem, cool, this new thing, it works, it's great. The enemy's going to catch up. Share your research and teach others. I want everyone, not everyone in this room is going to become a safe technician. Not everyone's going to think about, oh, I'm protecting documents and who am I, but you are going to design secure systems. You're going to design things with threat models that old people like us can't think about yet. Learn from the mistakes of the past. Think about what you're guarding. National secrets you want to control very tightly. You want to keep them in one place with very few copies, like in a bathroom of a country club or in a garage. Your personal effects, though, your will, your testament, your wares, you want many copies and you want them distributed. Tara and I don't have one safe. We have many in our house. We have safes in other people's houses. We have safes with some stuff here, some stuff there, some jewelry here, some stuff there, some backup tapes here and there. People and defense in depth is the best solution for everything of your personal life. The government's the government, and some of you are going to work for the government, but your life is based on community and distributing your defense across many people who you trust and you love. We protect us. Thank you very much. I don't know if that timer was leaving time for questions or not. If some of my awesome helpers want to, like, schlep all this stuff. We're going to go to the Lockpick Village, by the way. Someone wave or shout at me. Are we doing questions here or doing them elsewhere? What's the story? All right, it looks like we're moving out. We're going to get set up in the Lockpick Village. Give us 10 minutes to not mob us, and we'll get down there and do questions there. I can.